Hey! Today we're going to be talking about Pinterest, and we are going to do I'm going to give you a couple of tips and tricks for it, but I'm more talking about how to make a template in Photoshop so that you're able to push out pins faster. A lot of times what happens is people think that it takes so much work to make all these pins that they just don't do it, but Pinterest is super important for your business and it can really bring a lot of traffic to your website. It is how a third of my website traffic gets to my website. So it's super helpful and I really encourage you to use it. You're gonna learn how to make pins today or how to make them quicker if you already know how to do them. I do wanna talk about a couple of things with Pinterest real quick. The first thing is your images. If you don't know already, your images are very important. If you don't have good images, it's likely that people won't click on your pins. Make sure you have good images, and then from there, the ratio of your image. The ones that tend to do really well on Pinterest are a 2:3 ratio, meaning 600 pixels by 900 pixels or 700 pixels by 1,000 pixels. And you can even do really long pins. Those usually do well. But the ones that don't do that well, even though this is a square one right here, typically the square ones don't do as well as the 2:3 ratio. Next, the text on it. Text that does not do well on Pinterest is script font, which is unfortunate because I'm a calligrapher, so I thought that I should be using the script font, but it doesn't do well. Regular font does best. The reason you're going to use a text overlay, if you do choose to use it, is to tell people exactly what they're getting. For example, this pin right here, Beignet, that's my dog's name, says how to stop your dog pulling on the leash. Okay, so when I click on this, I expect to learn how to stop the pulling of the leash. If I click on this and go to a pasta recipe, that's totally not okay. So make sure your pins say what they mean, and when they get to the page, it makes sense because people need that. You need to have that trust with your pinners. And images with text are helpful to tell people exactly what they're getting. Lastly, I just want to talk about what Pinterest is. A lot of people think Pinterest is social media. It is not social media. Pinterest is a search engine, meaning that it's very close to something like Google. People search all day long for recipes, for weddings, for the best blender to use on Pinterest. And if you're not on Pinterest, you really should be, and I'm guessing that's why you're watching this tutorial today. So let's get started. We're gonna make some pins. I'm gonna show you how to do templates, and then you're gonna be on your way to having an awesome Pinterest account. To show you exactly how to create the template, I wanted to show you my template. So this is a pin that I created. It's 5 ideas for your wedding menus. This pin will be clickable. Of course, all pins are clickable, and it'll go through to my website to a blog that talks about 5 ideas for your wedding menus. So people who click on this know exactly what they're getting. Over on the bottom right-hand side, you can see I have all these folders. Now, these folders are what I use. They're my way of keeping things organized, and it makes making pins really easy because essentially it's a template for every single pin. So the first one I have is text. The second one, color blocks, text background, image. Make sure that these make sense to you. For me, this makes sense, but if you say, text background, I would rather say rectangle or whatever. Just make it intuitive and make sense for you. So for the text, I open it up and I have the text that I used for a previous pin in here. I haven't done too much here, but this is my text. Keep your font the same. You want to have a consistency in your pins. You want a font that's really easy to read. Remember I said script fonts don't do that well, so try to stay away from script fonts. The second one is color blocks. Now there's not color blocks here, but I'll show you an example of that. This is an example of using color blocks. I like to do this with some of my photos of my stationery because I feel that it is helpful for people when they're scrolling if they're planning their wedding and they see these colors. It kind of sticks out a little bit more and makes them want to click it. So that's something I like to do. You don't have to do that, but I just wanted to explain to you what color blocks mean. And text background, I call this text background. So it's this piece that I have behind the text. You can call it an overlay. You can do large ones where it covers almost all of the photo. You can do small ones. You could make it a circle, whatever you want. And then I like to give myself, like, I haven't done too many options down here, but I like to give myself a few options and colors. It's really easy to change the colors of these, but sometimes it's just almost easier to be able to just click something and the color change. So that's text background. And then lastly, one of our most important parts of this is the image. You want to have high quality, nice images, and it just makes it so easy. I have all these images in here and I can just click on them and make my pin. Now, once you have your pin all figured out and it looks good, you're just gonna save this as a JPEG, and then there you go. You have your pin. You can pin it, link it to your website or your blog, whatever you want to do. All right, we're gonna get down to the nitty gritty and I'm gonna show you how to create the actual template. So I'm gonna come here, I'm gonna create new in Photoshop, and I'm going to title this Pinterest Template 2 because I already have a Pinterest template 1. And then, like I said before, we want to do that 2:3 ratio. So I have 700 pixels here, I have 1,000 here. You usually want to work in pixels. It's because it's online, it's just the best way to be for that. And then resolution, I like to have it at 150. I find 72 to make things a bit pixelated. And then your color mode is RGB because it's going to be on the screen. We don't need to print these. And select create. Okay, so here we are with the size that we need for our pins. And I'm going to start by making folders. I'm going to do 1, 2, and you do that just down here on the bottom right hand side. There's a little folder icon and you just click it. It's going to make a new group. I guess you would call it groups. I call them folders. And then I'm just going to go through here and label them. So like I said before, if you want to label yours differently, that makes more sense for you, feel free to. I also like to use capitals. You don't have to do that. So I have one for text and then text background, and you're going to double click when you need to rename it, rename the folder. Then I'm actually going to do an overlay, and for me an overlay means it's going to cover this entire, not the entire piece, but almost all of it. And then lastly, we're going to have our image, which is super important. Now, one word of advice for this, if I go ahead and I populate these with, text and overlay and an image, because the image is the first layer here, it's going to show up on top and it's going to block all these other things. This was one of the hardest things for me to learn with Photoshop, is how these are organized. If you're a pro at Photoshop, you probably already know this, but just keep your image layer at the bottom because, oh man, it fell out. I hate it when it does this. Sorry, okay. Keep your image, what the heck is going on? Okay, undo. Keep your image at the bottom so that everything else is on top. And with your text, you're gonna want your text to be over the overlay. So bring that, oh my Lord. So bring it up so it's over the overlay and you don't have to worry about it being hidden underneath. Okay, so now I'm gonna come in and I'm gonna add something, or add an image to my image folder. I'm just gonna pull in this image. Okay, great. Now I will say they rarely fit perfectly in the ratio that you have here, so just make it fit. Make sure you don't distort your image. Perfect. Select enter, and then I'm going to make sure that this is in my image folder. And it is. Great. So I have my image down. Now I want to do an overlay. Instead of a text background, which I showed you earlier was kind of a small rectangle, or you could do a circle, whatever you want, I am going to do an overlay where I cover almost all of this. Typically, I would not do this with such a beautiful image, but I'm just showing you guys for teaching purposes. So come over here and get your shape tool. I'm going to get a rectangle. Perfect. And I don't really like that color that much. So what I'm going to do is just move it so I can grab my eyedropper tool. And let's kind of go for this pink color. Okay. And I'm going to take it, move it back. Now, I don't want this entire image to be blocked. That would make no sense, right? Sorry, make sure you move your rectangle into the overlay folder. Like I said, I don't want this to be blocking everything. So I'm going to play with the opacity, and I'm going to reduce the opacity until I feel comfortable with seeing the background a little bit. Okay, that looks good to me. Then for my text, I'm going to come in and grab my text tool. And I like to stay with the same font. I highly recommend doing that. And I like to use Europa. It's really simple to read, and I like to do capitals. And I'm going to say romantic San Diego wedding. So the person who clicks on this pin is expecting to see more images of a romantic San Diego wedding that I would have on my blog. I am going to change the color of this text because it's not showing up at all. I think white might show up. Let's see. Move it down. Okay. White shows up okay. Like I said, I'm just showing you guys kind of the basic way to do this, and then you can, of course, make your pins make the most sense for you. Make sure this is in your text. Okay, perfect. So, super simple way to set up your pins. As you can see, my text is here. I can turn off this little eye here and you can't see the layer. I can, if I don't like the overlay, I can change it. I can change the color of it. I can add different overlays. And then the image, I could change out the image if I wanted to. So let's say, oh, let's try this image. I could move that in there. Make sure it's in your image folder. Oops. And then I'm going to expand it. Okay, got it. And I'm gonna turn off that other image. So I have this new image. See how easy that is? You can make tons of pins, and then you're gonna just go up here and save it as a JPEG. And there you go, you have one pin. This looks horrible, by the way. I would not recommend this as a pin. But this one looks a little bit better, and I would even go over here to the overlay and turn up the opacity just a touch, so it's a little bit stronger. Okay, you guys, I hope that was helpful. You can come in here and add all sorts of different layers of text, all sorts of different images. You can just switch out your images and switch out your text. Super easy way to make lots of pins. You just save each one as a JPEG, make sure you label it, and I hope that your Pinterest account goes crazy from all the pins you're making. And if you have any questions at all, please feel free to ask me in the comments below. And thanks for watching.